Welcome to Millennium TV 24. I am Kim Seabrook. You're watching the Good Look In News, and of course, I want to thank you for tuning in with us today. And as you know, what I like to do is start off what's going right here in our city, New York City, that is. So let's get started with this weather. This weather, it's hot. Another day of heat is upon the city, bringing with it additional measures to keep New Yorkers safe from scorching temperatures. The National Weather Service has a heat advisory in place in New York City through 8 p.m. Friday, as high humidity also envelops the city. Yes, so make sure don't straighten your hair. Beat the heat. Tips to stay cool during the heat advisory throughout the 5 boroughs. There's cooling centers that are open, with many offering extended hours for those who do not have air conditioning at their homes. Public pools will also have extended hours throughout the extent of the heat advisory. And if you are not a pool person or you don't have a pool, there are plenty of beaches in the city to pick from to beat the heat while spending time outdoors. But experts do recommend staying out of the sun as much as possible and avoiding direct sunlight, particularly in the middle of the day. But if you must head outside, wear sunscreen and lightweight, light-colored clothing, avoid strenuous activities, and always, 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 always stay hydrated. Officials also recommend that you check on your neighbors and your loved ones, particularly the elderly, and don't forget the pets. The pets need love too. All right, so what do we have going on next? This COVID thing, right? In Manhattan, restaurant owner says about 20% of his staff plan to resign over New York City vaccine mandate. A fifth of staff at Burgertown restaurant in downtown Manhattan have said that they'll quit if they had to get the COVID-19 vaccine as part of New York City's vaccine mandate, and that's according to the restaurant's owner. So this is what's going on. Art Depot, who co-owns the Muya Burgers, Fries, and Shake restaurant in Times Square, told us that about a third of his 30 staff haven't gotten the jab yet, and that some don't plan to get it. Well, New York City is requiring restaurant workers to provide proof of at least one COVID-19 shot. The mandate is already in place, but the city won't start enforcing it until September 13th. DePaul said that some staff will leave their jobs at Muya, which has restaurants in 24 states, rather than get a shot. I am getting a lot of pushback from my workers, DePaul said. The majority are willing to comply, but there is a significant number, maybe 20 to 25%, who are willing to leave this industry if they're forced to comply when the compliance is not required in other industries, and I don't blame them. The mandate covers staff in gyms, restaurants, and entertainment venues, but not workers in the retail industry. DePaul said that some of his current employees moved to Muya after their previous restaurants introduced voluntary vaccine mandates. Now, those same people are threatening to leave my establishment if they're forced to get the vaccine, he stated. DePaul also mentioned that around 6 of Muya's 30 staff members plan to leave the restaurant. They plan to leave the restaurant industry completely over the mandate, and many will move to retail jobs, he stated. Well, listen, I think you have a choice, and I think that's what we need to focus on, our choices. Anyway, we're going to move forward. New York Governor Kathy Hochul. What's going on with Kathy Hochul? She chooses Senator Brian Benjamin for Lieutenant Governor. And Lieutenant Governor is the second highest ranking position in the state. So Benjamin, who was born and raised in Harlem, was elected in 2017 to represent the neighborhood and the Upper West Side. Benjamin ran for New York City Comptroller, but was unsuccessful, finishing in 4th. The Brown and Harvard graduate worked for Morgan Stanley before jumping into politics full-time. Hochul, who took over as the governor after Andrew Cuomo resigned, is expected to make a formal announcement later this week. Hochul's choice is a sign of her effort to diversify the Democratic ticket ahead of the 2022 midterm elections and to appeal to New York City residents. Benjamin ran in 2017 on a platform pushing criminal justice reform. He has supported closing the Rikers Island Correctional Facility. He also supported a range of criminal justice reforms, including ending cash bail, parole laws, ending solitary confinement, and reforming discovery. He's also sponsored bills pushing banks to divest from private for-profit prisons and to create a rainy day fund that the city can tap into for fiscal emergencies. Benjamin's selection by Hochul could help attract voters to her with his financial background. Hochul will have to run again for governor next year if she wants to keep her seat. New York City Public Advocate Jumaane Williams is exploring a run, and many believe Attorney General Letitia James may run as well. The race is expected to be tightly contested, with many candidates like New York City's Democratic mayoral primary earlier this year. Well, let's see. We definitely need some help in the city, and I hope that this change does do what we need. And moving forward, we have using homeless as pawns. New York City lawyers and doctors execute $31 million trip and fall scam. Listen to this. A racket in which corrupt lawyers and doctors generated over $20 million in lawsuit settlements by manipulating hundreds of homeless individuals and other desperate people to find trip and fall accidents that has been shut down with an indictment. Authorities announced this just this past Wednesday, that charges against 2 lawyers and 2 doctors in Manhattan federal court were unveiled by authorities who detailed the scam in which people allegedly agreed to undergo needless surgeries, sometimes to boost the value of lawsuits seeking compensation for fake accidents. U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss and the defendants preyed upon the most vulnerable members of society to carry out that fraud that stretched from January 2013 through April 2018. The defendants abused their professional licenses and positions of trust to steal millions of dollars from New York City businesses and their insurance companies through a massive trip and fall fraud scheme, she said in the release. Michael J. Driscoll, a New York FBI official, called the scheme beyond reprehensible. He said that the case illustrated the extent to which some are willing to go in the name of money. Mark Elephant, 49, is a lawyer, and 2 doctors, Andrew Dowd, 45, and Sadie Ribeiro, 51, were arrested on Wednesday and awaited court appearances. Another lawyer, George Constantine, 58, was expected to surrender this Thursday, and an indictment said that the lawsuit settlements exceeded $20 million, while Constantine collected more than $5 million in legal fees. It said Down, an orthopedic surgeon, earned $9,500 per surgery as he performed hundreds of knee and shoulder surgeries on scheme patients. Ribeiro, the indictment said, was a pain management doctor and the surgeon who performed the back surgeries and other procedures, treating nearly 200 patients. The indictment said participants in the scheme recruited more than 400 people to either claim that they have fallen where no accident occurred or to deliberately fall at New York City locations where they would claim there were cracks in concrete, sidewalks, potholes, or unsecured cellar doors. The lawyers then filed lawsuits claiming that falls resulted from the negligence of the owners of accident sites. The indictment said that authorities stated that the lawsuits attempted to defraud victims of more than $31 million. As a part of the scam, individuals who claimed or staged fake accidents were urged to receive continuing chiropractic care and eventually were told that they needed to undergo surgeries to boost the value of their lawsuits. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. The medical procedures included spinal fusions, knee and shoulder surgeries, and epidural injections. At least one patient who underwent a surgery as part of the fraud scheme was told after awakening from the general anesthesia that she almost died during the surgery. Some of them were drug users, and it was common for participants in the fraud to recruit them at New York City's homeless shelters. That's according to the indictment. I think that's really pitiful. But we're going to go into this last story before we get into our second segment. We want to talk about Spike Lee and what he has going on. And I wanted to talk about filmmakers because that's what we got coming up next. A director and producer, writer, everything, actress. So let's talk about Spike Lee. He scrambles to re-edit the 9/11 documentary after backlash for featuring conspiracy theories, right? So with the 20th anniversary of 9/11 terrorist attacks fast approaching, attention is turning to how Americans are still grappling with the legacy of that day. Acclaimed filmmaker Spike Lee is among those who created documentaries about the subject, but following backlash over including conspiracy theories in his HBO series that he's backtracking. According to Variety, Lee is back in the editing room and looking at the 8th and final chapter of NYC Epic Center's 9/11 2021-22. He says, I respectfully ask you to hold your judgment until you see the final cut. Again, that's a statement by Spike Lee. And the statement comes from following a report that the final episode of Lee's series, NYC Epic Center's 9/11 2021-22, which premiered this weekend, includes extensive interviews with members of the conspiracy group, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. This group pushes the debunked theory that the World Trade Center towers were destroyed not by Al-Qaeda, but a controlled demolition. And in an interview, Lee seemed to subtly push this theory as well, admitting that he still has some questions about what really happened on 9/11 and telling the paper that the amount of heat that it takes to make steel melt, that temperature is not reached. And then the juxtaposition on the way the building 7 fell to the ground. And when you put it next to the other building collapses, that was demolitions. It's like you're looking at the same thing. But people going to make up their own mind, and my approach is to put the information in the movie and let people decide for themselves. He also says, I respect the intelligence of the audience. But media critics who received the docuseries to screen in advance have objected to how the final episode, which has now been pulled from review consideration, features extensive interviews with conspiracy theories alongside interviews with experts who have researched 9/11 and its impacts for years, including Shyam Sundar, who researched the attacks for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So as we await the final cut of the last episode of Lee's NYC Epic Center's 9/11, for all its controversy, it includes highly anticipated interviews with leading public figures like Jon Stewart, Rosie Perez, Jeffrey Wright, John Turturro, Chuck Schumer, Bill de Blasio, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and more. NYC Epic Center's 9/11 2021-2 airs Sunday after last week, tonight on HBO, and streams on HBO Max, with the final episode premiering on Saturday, September 11th. But what we're going to do is we're going to go into a break, and we'll be right back again with a special guest. My name is Kim Seabrook. You're watching the Good Look In News on Millennium TV 24.